I remember the day my life changed forever. I was 17, full of dreams, believing I had control over everything. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. I found out I was pregnant. My heart pounded. My hands shook. Fear gripped me. I knew telling my parents would not be easy, but hiding it felt impossible. I remember walking into the living room, my bag still in my hands. My mother was sitting on the couch reading. I hesitated, my voice trembling. "I have something to tell you, Mom," I said. She looked up and smiled at me, but when I whispered, "I am pregnant," her face changed instantly into a storm of anger. Her eyes widened. She stood up, shouting, "How could you ruin your life? How could you bring this shame upon us?" My father slammed his hand on the table and said, "This is unacceptable. You are no longer welcome in this house." I froze. I could not speak. I begged them, "Please do not send me away. I have nowhere to go." They did not listen. Their voices were loud and harsh. I felt my chest tighten with panic. They told me to pack my things and leave. I could hardly breathe. I gathered a small bag, crying silently. I walked out, carrying nothing but fear and heartbreak. I remember the cold wind hitting my face as I left the house that had once been my safe place. Every step felt like a lifetime. I wandered the streets, unsure where to go. My mind raced with questions. How would I survive? How could they abandon me? How would I raise this child alone? That night, I sat on a small park bench, tears streaming silently. I felt completely alone. The world I had known shattered. A tiny spark of fear and determination ignited inside me. I whispered to myself, "I will survive for my child. I will not let this destroy me. I will fight." I promised that night that no matter how difficult life became, I would do everything to protect my unborn baby and give them a life full of love, even if I could not count on my own parents. Finding a place to live was terrifying. I found a tiny apartment, barely enough for me and my unborn child. Every day became a fight to survive. I worked 2 jobs, cleaning offices and waiting tables. I barely had time to sleep, but I had no choice. My baby's safety depended on me. Every night, I would sit on the small couch after long shifts, holding my belly, whispering words of hope and love. I could feel him moving, and it reminded me that I was not alone. Each kick was a promise that life goes on. I bought secondhand clothes for him and learned how to cook cheap but nutritious meals. I had to plan everything carefully. Every penny mattered. I cried sometimes silently, wishing my parents loved me, wishing they had just held me and told me it would be okay. I kept journals, writing my fears and dreams. I imagined a future where I could give my child everything they deserved. I became resourceful. I learned patience, strength, and courage. I learned to fight for survival. I met other single mothers who became my support network. They shared advice and helped me navigate difficult days. Their kindness reminded me that family is not always about blood. Sometimes it comes from those who care. I began to believe that despite rejection, I could still create a loving home. I painted the walls of my apartment in soft colors, imagining the joy my child would bring. I talked to him in my belly, telling him stories, imagining his laughter. My friends would bring baby clothes and toys, and sometimes I would cry hugging them tightly, grateful for their presence. The months passed and my belly grew. I felt both fear and excitement. I knew this child was my chance to rebuild my life. I promised myself that no matter how hard life got, I would protect him from hurt and shame. I would be the mother my parents refused to be. Raising my son was more challenging than anything I had ever imagined. Every morning I woke before sunrise to get ready for work. I cooked breakfast for him, made sure his clothes were clean and his school bag packed. While he ate, I watched him silently, feeling a mix of exhaustion and pride. He would smile at me with innocence that made me forget the long nights I cried alone. I had to make sure he never felt abandoned. I wanted him to grow up confident, loved, and happy. I enrolled him in a small school nearby where the teachers were kind and supportive. I became friends with other parents who gave advice and encouragement. I learned to juggle everything: work, household responsibilities, and being present for my son. I celebrated every small milestone, his first steps, first words, first day at school, with overwhelming joy. I wanted to make up for the love I never received. I became meticulous in planning his future. I saved money when I could and read every parenting guide I could find. I learned to cook healthy meals and organize our tiny home efficiently. On weekends, I took him to the park. We played soccer together, and I watched him run freely. I imagined a life where he never felt the shame or rejection I had endured. I built a routine that offered stability, even when my own heart ached. I often remembered my parents turning me away, and I wondered if they ever thought about me. I kept the memory close, not as a source of bitterness, but as a reminder that I could be better than the world that rejected me. I promised myself that no matter what obstacles came our way, I would provide a loving, safe environment. I became resilient, and my son grew strong and happy under my care. My life became a blend of exhaustion and fulfillment, every day reminding me that love can grow even from the harshest circumstances. The years passed, and my son grew into a bright, energetic child full of curiosity and laughter. I watched him explore the world with innocence. I could hardly believe how fast time had flown. One afternoon, a friend jokingly said, "Your parents must be curious by now. Maybe they would like to see him." My heart jumped. I had never considered it. Could I let them see him? Would I want them to regret the choices they made years ago? I spent days thinking about it. I felt fear, curiosity, and anticipation mixing inside me. I knew the past was painful, and any reunion could reopen old wounds. But I also wondered if my parents could ever understand the love and life they rejected. My son ran around the living room, unaware of my thoughts. I watched him and felt a surge of pride at how far we had come. I decided to call my parents carefully, pretending I needed advice about something trivial. Then gently, I asked if they wanted to meet their grandson. My mother's voice trembled. She said maybe. My father paused before quietly agreeing. My chest tightened. I felt nervous but also relieved. I could not predict how this encounter would unfold. I knew I had to protect my son's innocence while also confronting my parents' past actions. I explained to my son that we were visiting a family member, but did not give details. He held my hand with trust and excitement that made my heart ache and swell at the same time. The day of the visit arrived, and I dressed my son in his best clothes, trying to calm my nerves. Every step toward that house felt like carrying years of pain and hope at the same time. I wondered if my parents would recognize the person I had become, or if the past would overwhelm them. I was about to find out. We arrived at the house I once called home. The memories hit me instantly. Every corner reminded me of a past I had tried to forget. My son held my hand tightly, unaware of my inner turmoil. I took a deep breath and knocked. The door opened, and I saw my parents' faces, older but unmistakably them. My mother's eyes widened the moment she saw my son. She gasped and whispered, "Oh my God, he looks just like you." My father stepped forward slowly, his expression unreadable. My son smiled and reached out his tiny hand toward them. I could see my mother's hands shake as she lifted him into her arms. She held him close and whispered, "I am so sorry." My dad nodded quietly. I felt a strange mix of emotions: satisfaction, sadness, and hope. Years of struggle and loneliness led to this moment. They were finally seeing the life they had rejected. I watched them interact, my son laughing and reaching for them. I felt both pride and pain. I wanted to shield him from disappointment, but I also wanted them to understand what they had missed. I answered questions about him, about my life, about how I managed without bitterness. My parents listened intently, tears in their eyes. I realized that seeing him, they could not deny the love and strength he had brought into my life. I could feel the tension slowly melting as we shared stories and laughter. It was a strange but beautiful moment of reconciliation. I knew this encounter could not erase the past, but it could start healing a gap that had existed for years. My son unknowingly bridged it with his innocence and joy. I realized that this was not just about them seeing him. It was about proving to myself that love and resilience could survive, even when the people who should have supported you abandoned you. I felt a sense of closure but also an unexpected warmth. I had not anticipated this. After that initial meeting, my parents stayed longer than I expected. We all sat in the living room, my son playing with his toys while we talked quietly. The air was heavy with emotions. My mother apologized repeatedly, her voice breaking each time. My father remained silent for long moments, but I could see his eyes soften as he watched my son. I answered their questions honestly about how I managed the past years without resentment. I could feel my heart opening slightly to the idea that they were trying to make amends. They asked about his school, his friends, his daily routines, and I answered carefully yet warmly. I wanted them to understand the life they had missed. My son ran to the window and pointed at a bird. I watched him and smiled, realizing that this moment was bigger than I had anticipated. It was not revenge. It was not humiliation. It was about understanding. It was about showing them what they had turned away from. The tears in my mother's eyes reminded me of their human flaws. I realized forgiveness could be powerful, even if it was difficult. The hours passed with laughter, tears, and moments of silence where we just watched my son play. I saw glimpses of the people I once knew in my parents, but also the growth that time had forced upon us. All the anger and pain from years ago seemed to be replaced with tentative curiosity and a desire to connect. I knew the process would be slow, and not everything would be perfect, but this day marked a turning point. My son had unknowingly become the bridge between past pain and present understanding. I felt a deep sense of accomplishment as a mother, knowing that no matter what had happened, they could not take away the love and strength I had cultivated in my life. That evening we prepared to leave, but none of us wanted to say goodbye immediately. My parents seemed unsure how to act, but I could feel their intentions were genuine. My son hugged them tightly, and I felt my chest swell with pride. He looked up at me, smiling, and I knew he sensed the significance of the day. My mother whispered that she wished she had supported me back then, and that she was proud now. I nodded silently, holding back tears. I realized the journey of healing was beginning. I had always feared that opening this door would only reopen old wounds, but it had done the opposite. It had created a new path. I could feel my parents' regret, but also their willingness to participate in our lives. I explained gently that the past could not be undone, but the future could be shaped with honesty and love. My father finally spoke, acknowledging the mistakes and expressing a desire to be better. I could see my son's laughter making them soften even more. The trust in his eyes reminded me that children can be powerful agents of change. Their innocence and joy demand empathy and warmth. I saw the difference between living with regret and embracing responsibility. I knew that life had given me the chance to rewrite a small part of the story. My parents were learning too, but the focus remained on my son and the life we had built together. The connection between us grew in those hours, even if fragile and new. I knew this would be a long journey, but the first step had been taken. We drove home in silence, my son asleep in the back seat. I watched him breathing softly and felt the weight of years of struggle lighten slightly. I realized that I had achieved what I never imagined possible. I had survived abandonment, hardship, and loneliness, and still created a life full of love and resilience. That night, I watched my son sleep peacefully, his tiny chest rising and falling with gentle rhythm. I felt gratitude for his presence and the journey we had endured. I whispered quietly to him, thanking him for bringing closure to a chapter one had carried for years. I thought about my parents and the way their eyes had softened that day. I knew forgiveness and understanding could grow slowly, but I also knew the pain of the past could never be entirely erased. I realized that life has a way of giving back what it takes away in unexpected ways. My son had become the living proof of resilience, love, and strength. He had created a bridge where none seemed possible, and in doing so had allowed me to feel a sense of closure and triumph. I reflected on the years of struggle when I had felt alone and abandoned. Every sleepless night, every tear, every moment of doubt had led me to this moment of quiet satisfaction and hope. I understood that even when the people who should have loved you most turn away, life can still provide beauty, joy, and connection. I felt pride in the person I had become and the mother I had grown into. I knew our journey was far from over, but the foundation had been laid for a future where love and understanding could flourish. I felt a warmth in my chest knowing that my son would carry the strength of our story into his own life. I whispered to him again, reminding myself that our bond was unbreakable, and that no rejection, no betrayal, could ever diminish the love and courage we had built together. This night marked not an ending, but a beginning, a testament to resilience and the unshakable power of love to heal wounds. Even when the world has turned its back on you,